Today I'm reading from the book Spirit of Homeopathy, book written by Dr.Rajan Shankaran. Philosophy Part 18, Repetition of Dose. I think it is fairly obvious that the ideal time to repeat dose would be when the effect of the previous dose is exhausted. We shall discuss three aspects of the questions. How do we know when the effect of the previous dose has been exhausted? What will happen if we repeat before the dose has exhausted its action? What will happen if we do not repeat even after the dose has exhausted its action? How do we know that the dose has exhausted its effect? For this, we have to first understand what the effect of the dose is. The effect of the dose of the correct remedy is to reduce the level of central disturbance. This means that the patient feels better on the whole. His mental and generals are ameliorated and he feels more comfortable. His condition for himself and others have gone down and he has more space to be in the moment both physically and mentally. After a period of time, when we see that the level of central disturbance has reverted back to its original position, he again feels the same way as before. This means that the dose has exhausted its action. We must distinguish between an apparent return to the original position and the real return. It is possible that the return to the original position, as reported by the patient, is not real but apparent, meaning that the person was and it's ameliorated, but due to an immediate exciting cause, the state has been temporarily aggravated, and now it is looks as if it is in the same position. In this case, we have to wait for the exciting factor to go away and then judge the level of the central disturbance. This is like when we want to know the blood pressure, we take it at a time when the patient is not excited so as to avoid factor of instability. So we take it usually first things in the morning after sleep, but patient is not excited so as to avoid factors of instability. So we take it usually first things in the morning after sleep, but suppose the patient suddenly gets anxious as you measure his blood pressure, you will see that there is a marked change. This cannot be relied upon as we have ignored a factor of instability at the time of recording. In the same way, we have to keep the standard conditions in mind when measuring a man's central disturbance. Unless we judge the effect of the dose under standard standards of circumstances, we may reach wrong conclusion at wrong conclusion about the state of the his mental disturbance. For example, when a man depressed because his boss has fired him, we should allow his depression to settle down, and after a few days or weeks, we can assess him. If that time we find the central disturbance to be same or higher than earlier, then this is the time for repetition of the dose. Why dose? Why does the dose exhaust its action? We have already seen that disease is an out of proportion or unsuitable reaction. Out of proportion reactions occur because of the phenomenon of aggravation and under an exciting factor means phenomenon of excessive reaction. Unsuitable reactions take place also because of root of the disease. It is these two factors that tend to bring back the state of original level. The second reason why the dose exhausts its effect is that when the central disturbance is lower and the patient's condition is somewhat ameliorated, the body draw back little of the peripheral disturbance into the central disturbance. And then the level of central disturbance touch the original level. The cases that will not require repetitions are therefore cases with no pathology or when the central disturbance was caused by the acute exciting factor which has passed away for a time after some time. For example, person who is subjected sudden frighten is now in the state of aconite. You have to give a aconite, and it will not be necessary to repeat. There is no exciting factor and therefore there is going to be an automatic degradation of the state. Further, there is no root and therefore the chances of the state getting excited are even less. In such a case, repetition will not be required. But when there is an exciting factor, repetition is necessary because as long as there is a stress, the state will tend to go out of proportion automatically. Or if there is a root, as it in a chronic cases, depending on the excitability of the root, the state will get excited from the factor which are innocent for other people. That state will aggravate itself and central disturbance will reach the same level again. After a remedy, as we start reducing the central disturbance, the excitability of root will also decrease, and as this happen, it will be less affected by outside factor. It will be less excitable and therefore aggravated to lesser extent. Now another label, how long does it take the dose to exhaust its effect? If the exciting factor is very strong and it is still persistent, the dose will exhaust itself very quickly. If the root is very excitable, even minor exciting factor will strongly aggravate the state and therefore the effect of the dose will be soon existed. Aggravating factor in the environment and in the situation also cause the dose to exhaust its effect quickly. A strong pathology will also cause the dose to exhaust quickly. All these circumstances will require frequent repetition of the dose. The matter of repetition should be determined by when the dose really exhausts itself and therefore one cannot make a standard rule to apply in all cases. If we repeat high potency frequently, the following possibilities are arise. Where the potency is equal to or lower than the central disturbance, such a potency is not capable of aggravating the central disturbance since it cannot produce something more intense than the exciting central disturbance. It is therefore not capable of producing much harm, given the fact that the body is already able to tolerate the central disturbance. It may be worth repeating the lower potency frequently to speed up the cure, but only when the previous dose has exhausted its effect. You can also gradually step up the potency until you get an aggravation, then stop. Do not repeat the potency that caused the aggravation, especially in the case which are not in the position to tolerate such aggravation. If you repeat a potency higher than the central disturbance, the body which could tolerate the higher stimulants, may not be able to tolerate prolonged high stimuli, and this can lead to the death of the patient or the body diverting this increased central disturbance into the pre-existing peripheral pathology, thus aggravating the pathology, rendering the case more difficult to cure. So far, we have talked about the repetition the dose of the correct remedy. If the remedy is wrong, repeating the dose may lead to suppression and the pathology could be pushed even deeper since the remedy will act locally. Whether the potency is higher or lower than the central disturbance will be decided on the intensity of the mental and journals. In our assessment of the central disturbance, the following criteria could be helpful. If the aggravation is sharp, the potency is higher. If the remedy acts quickly, it is likely to be very near the central disturbance or the higher. The longer the duration of action, the closer the potency is to the central disturbance, provided there is no exciting cause, since the exciting cause will exhaust the action of the remedy faster. The effect of the dose is instantaneously. It is one impact that the dose gives, but the effect of this impact can last for a long time. The aggravation is momentary, but if we keep on repeating this momentary aggravation for a long period of time, it can be harmful in some cases. Sometimes we may be too cautious to repeat the despite repetition being needed. The central disturbance was better, but now it has come back to the original level. But we just wait and wait. In such a case, the central disturbance will do two things. It will excite the root, making it even more prominent with time. it will again go back into the peripheral pathology. What came out of pathology will go back into the pathology, and so your good work will be spoiled. For these two reasons, we have to repeat the dose when its action is exhausted.